The International Committee of the Red Cross, ICRC, is a global humanitarian organization based in Geneva, Switzerland. And the signatories to the Geneva Convention have given the ICRC the mandate to protect civilians from being harmed due to international and internal armed conflicts. It's also this objective of protecting civilians from any sort of conflicts and also providing them with all the necessary support. Ladies and gentlemen, this is our dialogue with the program. I'm Shifarao Lago, and my guest today is the spokesperson of the International Committee of the Red Cross in Ethiopia, Jude Funwi. We'll be talking about a host of issues in this regard, especially when it comes to the pre- and post-conflicts in Ethiopia. Do stay with us. Jude, thank you so much for joining me, for making the time to talk to us.
Thank you so much for having me on the program, Shifarao.
The International Committee of the Red Cross, ICRC, has many great objectives, one of which is protecting civilians from being harmed as a result of armed conflicts and also providing them with the necessary assistance. As you know, Ethiopia, unfortunately, had to go through some situations as a result of the conflict that lingered for quite some time. And tasked with such noble cause, such objective of protecting civilians, how did you face the challenges and how successful have you been so far in this regard?
Thank you. When you talk about protection in Ethiopia, it remains a core part of our work in the country, and we continue to do it. We don't just do it during the war. We did it during the war. We did it before the war. We are doing it right now. In fact, we are really focusing on the protection concerns now. During the war, just like we are doing now, we made sure we maintained a constant dialogue with all those who were involved in the fighting, reminding them constantly that they have an obligation under international law to protect everyone who is not participating in the war. It also means that you do not attack civilian infrastructure. You do not attack hospitals, healthcare facilities. So we spent every minute that we could to make sure we push for that. We also were visiting detainees, people who were detained during the war, those who are still detained now, those who are detained in different parts of the country, to make sure that conditions of detention are humane and that they are treated with the dignity that they deserve. Another protection effort that we have made was to make sure that we protect family links. Make sure that people who were separated during the war or who are currently separated because of any violence happening in any part of the country, that they can reconnect with their families. And we provided, for instance, in the north, in the war in northern Ethiopia, we provided more than 406,000 phone calls and messages for free for people to be able to reach out to their family members, because we do the search, then we try to connect them. And as you know, for instance, in Tigray at the time, there was a time when there were communication lines were down. So we had to use our satellite phones to make sure that they can reach their families. Those who suffered tremendously during the war included children. And for children, it's even worse. So we made sure that we searched, identified, and reunited children, especially unaccompanied children, with their families. And we continue to do that today, and we are even expanding our activities in that area.
Also, going on from there, Jude, as you know, in any conflict, be it local or international, there are diverse issues, diverse challenges that make it very difficult for you in your efforts of providing all the necessary humanitarian aid, assistance, things like that. So during the conflict, how did you manage to provide those life-saving items of food or shelter, things like that. How did you manage, or did you fail at some point and were you frustrated at some point?
Look, we have had very limited resources, and we've been able to do a lot with the limited resources that we have. So what we have done, and which we continue to do, is to prioritize. So we really prioritize life-saving initiatives. We prioritize those areas where no other humanitarian agency is working. So we have to act quick to save lives. For us, that's very important, even with the limited resources. And you see, like, as we speak now, the attention given to the humanitarian situation in the north of the country is waning, whereas the humanitarian needs remain extremely high in Tigray, in parts of Amhara, and in parts of the Afar region. We see growing humanitarian needs in the Welegas. There are many, many more people, thousands of them, who need humanitarian assistance urgently. But we are having very few humanitarian agencies that are operating in the Welegas. We find ourselves in most parts of the region responding to the needs alone, which is really difficult. If you go to areas like Begi and Kondole, you go to Bulbul, there are many other places. We are the only humanitarian agency responding to the needs. So we have had to prioritize to be able to save lives with the limited resources that we have at the moment.
As you know, in any conflict, there are segments of society that are most vulnerable, that need your attention the most, like mothers, children. Did you manage to come up with some specific mechanisms in order to specifically, meet their needs? What specific measures did you take in this regard, if any, of course?
Look, it's important. Like I said, we prioritize life-saving activities, and we prioritize the most vulnerable. And in this case, like you said, children. When you go to the different parts of the country, let's take the case of Tigray again now, which is, Tigray is special because the region has been closed for some time now. We have a lot of malnourished children who are in that region who need help. We have many women who are malnourished. Nutrition problems are a big concern. So at the moment, we are running a nutrition program in the region. We have nutritionists that we have sent there who are running a nutrition program to try to respond to this issue. We also have people who were wounded during the war. We are having people who are getting injured now by explosive remnants of war. You find some of these people who are wounded, at the same time they are malnourished, and then they need support, urgent support. Those are the people we are prioritizing because to us they are the most vulnerable. Okay, so there are other vulnerabilities that are linked to sexual violence. Survivors of sexual violence, they are vulnerable, very vulnerable at the moment. So we are prioritizing those ones. The issue of explosive remnants of war, like I told you, the victims, those who are most affected, are children. Why? Because children are curious. They see these unexploded weapons, they play with them, they want to pick and find out what this is all about. And then at the same time, they are unaware of the dangers that these unexploded weapons pose to them. So we see that in hospitals that we support in Tigray, in parts of Amhara and in Afar region, because we see every day children and even adults, women who have been injured by these explosive remnants of war. So for us, that's an area of vulnerability that we need to address, and address it now. We don't have to wait to do it in a few months or in a year. So that's an area of vulnerability, and we have to respond to that. We are responding to these vulnerabilities, but we have very limited resources at the moment, so we have to just prioritize. And it's even the same with displaced people. If you go to, for instance, in Afar region, in parts of Afar region, like in Berali, we have displaced people. We have them in Zone 4, in Zone 3, people who were displaced in Zone 4 and Zone 2, sorry, of the Afar region. Many of these displaced people are found around Semera, around the Logia area. And they are in need of help because most of them lost their livelihoods. They were either looted during the war. They don't have anything to return to. Those are people who are vulnerable. We need to pay attention to them. We see many more displaced people in Shambu, in parts of the Welegas. The numbers are increasing in that part of the country. They are vulnerable. So the needs are very high, and even prioritizing the vulnerabilities then become difficult for us sometimes.
Apart from that, I think there's also this issue of trauma and psychological disorder that comes as a result of the war, the conflict in different parts of the country. And I think this also needs your attention, of course, and also the attention of others. So in this regard, what are you doing? Do you have any specific things that you are doing here?
Yeah, the way we address trauma, we have, at the moment, we really focus on survivors of sexual violence. We are supporting 18 one-stop centers in the country and 8 safe houses. So you go to Adigrat in Tigray, you go to Mekele, Maishu, Shire, you come to Desi, Waldia, Kobo, even in Knekemt. We are supporting one-stop centers. These one-stop centers provide various services to these survivors of sexual violence, including mental and emotional well-being support. Okay, so we make sure we provide them with what they need to give the urgent care to these people. These are people, I was in Waldia, for instance, at the safe house. I visited the one-stop center in Waldia, in Amhara region. I was in Mekele at the one-stop center. I visited, I spoke to some of these survivors. They shared really heartbreaking stories. They have to deal with the physical wounds that they experience. They have the invisible wounds, which are really unbearable for them. Their suffering is unimaginable. So then they have the real issue to deal with, which is stigma. Okay, then the trauma increases because they are not accepted by society anymore. Some of them have been abandoned by their families and then rejected by their communities. So what we are doing at the moment, we are doing carrying out outreach activities. We've done that already in various parts of Amhara region. We did that in the Welegas. We are doing that in Tigray, and in a few weeks again, we are going to roll out more of this. We are training community influencers and volunteers to try to raise awareness about this stigma, okay? Because if you address stigma, you reduce the trauma that they face. At the same time, we are supporting the safe houses and the one-stop centers that give them the counseling and psychological support that they need to overcome this trauma that they are facing.
Exactly.
So for now, that's what we are really focusing on because it's a priority. Like I said, we do not have the resources to deal with everything at the same time, so we have to prioritize.
Yeah. You know, apart from prioritizing, I think there's also this issue of fairness because the conflict covered 3 regions, Amhara region, Tigray region, and Afar region. And also this is also, you have also a lot on your plate in this regard when it comes to fairness. So how fairly are you trying to address the issues that need your attention, of course?
We are driven by the needs and vulnerability, okay? If you look at how we've been responding, we are in, I mean, you are talking about the conflict in the north. We are in all the 3 regions since the conflict was happening. And just to come to your point about fairness, when the war was active, the Red Cross remained in Tigray as the only humanitarian organization that was active in most of the front lines responding to the needs. We never stopped our operations. Our staff were there. Even when it was dangerous for them, their safety was at risk, but they stayed the cause of humanity because the needs were high. Our office in our subdelegation in Gondar, our staff were there. They were responding to the needs on the Amhara side. Same in Afar, and I would give you a very practical example. In Afar, there is no physical rehabilitation center at the moment, okay? Which means people who were wounded or who have physical disability challenges in Afar region, it has been very difficult for them to get care because they have in the past relied on the physical rehabilitation center in Mekele and then the one in Desi. But during the war, it was difficult for them to move. They couldn't go for this care in Mekele, they could not go for it in Desi. So we have been carrying out outreach activities in Afar region for persons with disabilities because we know that they do not have these services. So our teams go there, they screen them, they provide them with the services that they need, mobility services, crutches, wheelchairs. And for those serious cases that we have there, we refer them to the Physical Rehabilitation Center in Desi, which we support, or we refer them here to Addis Ababa. So we are supporting across the country 14 physical rehabilitation centers, including Black Lion Hospital here in Addis and Cure Hospital. That's to tell you that we are driven by the needs. We are responding to needs. We've been providing food and basic household items to displaced persons in parts of Afar where no one was responding to those needs at the time we did. In the Amhara region, from Kobo, Sekota, we have been responding to the needs across the region through Wakhimra. We were amongst, we were even the first organization that was able to get into previously inaccessible parts of some of these regions. So we are driven by the needs. It's not about making someone see that we're doing this. No, it's about the needs. We respond to the needs and the vulnerability because for us, priority is to save lives. Okay, you save lives. That's why we operate our emergency response programs. We act very quickly. Yeah. And we make sure we are where we are supposed to be in the shortest time possible.
So let's move on from there. You know, now gladly this conflict is over because of the historic truce between the TPLF and the federal government in South Africa. Now that peace is being restored, you know, there is this issue of rehabilitation, issues of reconstruction, damaged properties, things like that. And what's your contribution like along with the government and other entities in this regard?
Yeah, in terms of rehabilitation, I just talked about the wounded persons that we are helping right now. In fact, at the moment, we have a team of surgeons, nurses, and anesthetists that have been sent. They are currently based in Mekele, responding to those needs in the region because at the moment we have many more people who are developing secondary complications, and they may die from this if they do not get assistance immediately. So we've deployed the surgical team to the region. They are responding, helping with surgeries now. Our physical rehabilitations, the physical rehabilitation centers that we are supporting are doing same in different parts of the country, 14 of them. So for us, that's really important. Secondly, we are focusing on the nutrition. The cases of malnutrition, we are trying to help these people recover, regain themselves. There is also the issue of displaced peoples, but also those that have returned to their communities of origin. There is a challenge because most of them return to their communities of origin with absolutely nothing. Some of them have found their homes damaged or looted, so they have nothing. We need to focus on them and make sure that they get what they need to start their lives all over again. We see displaced people who are reluctant to return to their communities of origin because of the dangers of the explosive remnants of war. So we are now focusing on this issue. We are planning to roll out very soon awareness activities and safe behavior activities to help the communities know how to keep safe with these unexploded weapons that are littered all over the place in some parts of the 3 regions. And it's really important also that we highlight at this point that the survivors of sexual violence, they still need so much support, and we are on it right now. So that's a priority for us, because to rehabilitate, you need to get people who are traumatized to come back, to be able to regain themselves. You need to get these people who are malnourished to regain themselves. Same with the people who are wounded. And we are really focusing in these areas at the moment.
Okay, thank you so much for that idea. As you know, Ethiopia is also being affected by climate-induced droughts in different parts of the country, including Wolaga and others, of course. And I know that you are also contributing share in this regard to provide the much-needed food and other assistance. Can you briefly tell me some of the things that you are doing here?
Actually, our drought response is being led by the Ethiopian Red Cross Society. The International Committee of the Red Cross has introduced the livestock insurance program in Meyumuluke Wareda in East Harage zone in Oromia region. The reason we introduced that livestock program is because the communities in that area were affected by ethnic conflicts, and then the drought as well, the prolonged drought. So they're facing the consequences of the drought and then the conflict. So most of them lost their livestock, and their livelihoods depend on these animals. So we had to introduce the insurance to help them recover from the devastating impact of the drought, but at the same time to help them prepare for the drought seasons that are coming up. So that insurance program is there. Secondly, just on the 15th of March, we handed over a mega solar-powered water project, water system, to the communities in Roge. Kebele, Roge Kebele is still in Meyumuluke. Because of the drought, because their lands were dried up, there was no water for them. I was there and I saw with my own eyes people drinking water from rainwater collection points. The water was browned, okay? You find them drinking water from there, and they had to trek 20 kilometers plus to get this water, which they used to wash, to cook. Many of them told me that they've been facing diseases, diarrhea, and over the years because of that. So this is a project ICRC started in 2020. We handed over that project now. We had to dig a well 282 meters deep. Connected that well with a pipeline of 7 kilometers to the community, and then we have 2 tanks, a capacity of 30,000 liters each. These tanks now distribute water to 7 water points that we constructed in the communities. We also distribute the water to the health center in Roge, and then we have also constructed 3 water troughs for their animals, for their livestock. So they now bring their camels, their donkeys, their cows and goats to come and drink water from this area. We have people, I was there myself and I saw people who came from the Somali region also to drink from this water pond. So that's to help in cushioning the impact of the drought in that community.
Let me make this question final. As you know, as you also said, you are prioritizing things because of this magnitude of the issue. As you know, there is conflict on the one hand, there is drought on the other. So the issues are wide-ranging, and they need the concerted efforts of everyone, not just the ICRC. So what is your message to international entities, to global, local entities as well, to any actor that's concerned?
The needs are very high across the country. If you go, for instance, in the Welegas, there are really not many humanitarian aid that's trickling in that part of the country. If you go to the Somali region, where we are working, there are humanitarian needs. There were these people that were displaced during the recent clashes in city zone. Okay, we had to act fast to respond quickly to the urgent situation there. We are still in the region. We see in the north, in Tigray, the needs remain extremely high, but the attention to the humanitarian crisis in that region is waning. We still have, at the moment, hospitals that are struggling because some of these hospitals were destroyed. They were damaged during the war. They need rehabilitation. Hospitals still need medicine. People still need food. They need water. So the needs remain extremely high, and we need more resources to be able to respond to this. We need many more humanitarian agencies to respond to these needs. For us at the Red Cross, we are sometimes overstretched because, as you know, we have adopted this all Ethiopia approach, which means we are not focusing in one region or in two regions. We are working in the Oromia region, we are in Amhara region, in Afar region, in the Somali region. Even we are providing physical rehabilitation services in Asosa in the Benishangul Gumuz region. So it's not possible for us to respond to all the needs in all these places with the limited resources that we have. So we need more actors on board.
Yes, I think that's a message, and this is a clarion call because it is a call of urgent support and need to Ethiopians in different parts of the country. Jude, thank you so much for your wonderful ideas.
Thank you again for having me, Shivara.
Well, dear viewers, with that, we come to the end of today's program, and thank you so much for being with us so far. Until I see you next time with another program, it's goodbye from me, Shivara Olago. Stay safe and take care.